welcome back, everyone. It's another episode of the Nonprofit Show. We have Matt Glazer here. Matt, I was talking with our executive producer, Kevin Pace, this morning as we were getting ready. You know, there aren't too many times when during a show I've had a guest on and where I'm like, you're coming back. I'm making you come back. And I think that you were like one of maybe 3 people I said that to this year. And I got so excited when we were talking to you. I was like, I bullied you into saying, yeah, okay, lady, I'll come back.
Easiest yes I've ever given. It's an honor to be back. I'm so honored, and it's such a privilege to make that list.
Well, thank you. It was great talking with you. It's going to be great talking with you again because we're going to be talking about building consistent engagement. And it seems so hard to do, and then it seems so easy to do, but somehow it's like a mystery. And so we're going to really kind of get your advice and drill down on this so that we can
Yeah.
figure out how we do this, especially I think, Matt, knowing that we're going into a new year. And for a lot of us, it gives us permission to start over or make changes. And so it's going to be a good conversation and something that we all really need to hear. Something that we need to hear each and every day are from our presenting sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Holdings Nonprofit Banking, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and JMT Consulting. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Hey, I'm also an author with one of our other co-hosts, Tony Bell, the amazing Tony Bell of Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. We collaborated and have written a new book called The Architecture of Fundraising. It's available on Amazon. I'm just saying, great stocking stuffer to that nonprofit professional in your life. Okay, Matt, I've done, my hustle. I'm back to you. You are the founder and CEO of Blue Sky Partners. What is it that you all do?
We are a boutique consulting firm based out of Austin, Texas, but with national reach, and really focus on strategy, operations, and management consulting. And if you're thinking, what does that truly mean? If you need an interim staffer, we can be your interim staffer. If you need operations support or strategic plan or landscape analysis, that's what we're doing. And so one of the things I'm really excited about talking with you today is how we really anchor in some of that human-centered design work, which is what I think really sets us apart. So that way we're making sure that this work happens with each other and not to each other. And so we've been around for about 8 years, and we're excited about what the new year brings and the continuing this work.
It's really important, and I love that you seem to have a cadence to you that allows for some reflection and thought, and so that we're not just like ping ponging around trying to respond to everything. And wow, that's a tough thing to be able to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that we really talk about with not just our clients, but to ourselves, is that we want to make sure that we're doing good work for a long time. And we don't define what that means. And if you're looking at your calendar at the end of this year and your to-do list is 97 things long, or you have all these aspirations or goals and you're hoping to get 40 or 50% of it done in the last quarter of a year, it's not going to get done, and it's not going to be done at the quality that I think everybody listening and everybody who participates in these kind of conversations really can aspire to be. And so, I'm a big believer in doing a little bit of work a lot of the time, so that way you get yourself to have the opportunity to be sick or check out or not be 100%, right? And so that's what we're really trying to teach and make part of our process.
Yeah, super interesting. And I think that how you approach things is really going to become one of the main conversations we have in the new year. There's so much discord and upset and responsiveness versus being thoughtful and then moving forward, right? And so I appreciate your mindset in your approach on this. So part of the discussion I want to have with you today is about who we communicate with, who we engage with. And when we talk about outreach, you're advising us to keep it simple and repeatable.
Yeah.
With so much going on, does that really work?
Yeah, and I think you highlighted already one of the tensions, right? Which is we do have this onslaught of stuff happening to us, right? We have to be responsive. Grantors do need you to do things. Customers and clients need you to do things. The pipe bursts in your home or your office, you got to fix that problem, right? So what we're really advocating isn't that you're not going to be responsive. What we're advocating for is what are the repeatable things that you can make part of your system, part of your intention. What are the things that have the same steps for the most part? When I'm thinking about filling out a like grant application, there are things I know that are going to be in every grant. Who we are, who our team is, what our terms and conditions are, how long the company has been around, how long the organization has been around. And so if I can get 60 or 70% of that put into a folder somewhere and I'm just modifying it, well,
Mhm.
I'm only writing 30%. But
Mhm.
those are the kind of small tactical pieces that we got to break down. And so, one of the things I like to talk about with folks all the time is I'm a for-profit company, right? I am a consultant and I know exactly how much it costs to do my business.
Mhm.
I have found that if I do 5 emails a week, just saying to people, hey, I'm out here,
Mhm.
I'll be good for the year, right? That's all it takes. So it could
Mhm.
be on a Monday, it could be on a Tuesday, it could be on a Wednesday, but that is the small repeatable piece every single time is, did I do my 5 emails this week? There's
Mhm.
got to be another dozen or 2 dozen things that all of us are interacting with all of the time that can be broken down to be repeatable pieces, whether that's board communications, client communications, quality control, so many different things. And that's the first step has got to be identifying what your sort of small rocks are that happen consistently and then can be templatized or can be handed off or used as professional development for other folks. And the more you just kind of keep that front in mind, then you're not going to get to the end of a year and go, wait, where did the year go? I got to do all this thing. I got to go raise all this money. I got to go do all these pieces. Like that's not what we're advocating for.
Right. I think in the nonprofit sector, we've been so programmed, especially as you and I speak towards the end of the year during the holidays, that all of our money is going to come at that Q4 push. And that's when, Americans open their checkbooks and, all this stuff's going to happen. And then if it doesn't, it's devastating versus what you're talking about is those small, consistent steps
Yeah.
which frankly can be a little boring, but I think that's where the magic lies.
I think back and hearing you say that, one of the things I think back is when I launched my very first nonprofit. I was way too young to be doing that. I was super young. It was a statewide organization in Texas. And I realized that one of the things we were going to have to do was just build a sustaining donor program. Just going to have to
Mhm,
do that. And
mhm,
I remember going to buy books and getting authors to sign them. And I
mhm,
remember getting tchotchkes and you could see like I've got all this memorabilia around me. So I've tried to figure out like what could I get rid of. And I literally would say in our email list, you donate anything every month, $1, $100, doesn't matter. We've got these tchotchkes to give away. We got these things to give away. And telling my list all of the time the value of being a sustaining donor. And you want to talk about boring? It's not, that is not the fun part of fundraising, right? I'd rather go
No.
ask for $100,000 and talk about this big capital campaign.
Yeah.
But if I talk about the sustaining donor piece every single month, all of a sudden we went from 0 members, 0 sustaining donors the day I opened the door to by the time I left after 4 years, we had $7,000 a month coming in as sustaining donors, just gifts like that.
Right.
Doesn't fund the operation. It doesn't make us a totally solvent organization, but I don't know any organization that wouldn't be excited to have $60,000 a year in sustaining gifts, right?
Right.
And for some, that could be catastrophic, but it's being front of mind, keeping it simple, talking about that impact, knowing that, hey, you're paying for all our rent, all our utilities every single
Right.
month. Before we do anything else, we have that taken care of because of
Right.
your generosity. Break
Right.
it apart, make it small.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I think too, we have kind of conditioned ourselves to, and this is a very recent thing, but this like unicorn donor, the person that's going to come in and give us, the $1 billion or the
Yeah.
$1 million, which $1 million seems like it's not much anymore, right? Because these mega
Yeah.
gifts have gotten so out of control. And I say out of control, and that's not really the right way to phrase it, but they become so dramatic and eye catching that I think the regular small person donation, it's not as sexy and it falls by the wayside. It's easier for us to look away and chase those big unicorn donors, which is really a mistake. I think I really, really do. But
Yeah. And you know what makes us a lot of organizations more appealing to those big unicorn donors? Sustaining givers, 100% activation from boards, knowing that they're not paying for the paper and pins, that a dollar that comes in is going for the program. Like,
yeah.
so they do have a conversation with each other, and so thinking about how you break those apart makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about this connectivity to our stakeholders and identifying them and trying to figure out who's doing what. I mean, I'm assuming that this means like not everybody's the same, that you're going to kind of put your donors and your clients in different buckets. Talk to us about this and how you see it.
I think this is a hard conversation, and it's one of those things where, when you start having the conversation, it almost comes off like you're picking your favorite child, right? And that's not what you're doing, right? You're saying, I love all of my children, but all of my children are very different, right? And
Right.
so the way we think about this is consistently, who are your customers? Who are your clients? Who are your beneficiaries? And having real conversations, because in a lot of organizations, especially nonprofits, your clients are not your customers, right? A
Right.
foundation is your customer, and you have to do the
Right.
reporting. A city might be your customer because they're giving you the money. And the big difference is the customer is the person that gives you the money. The beneficiary or the user or the client is wildly different than that. And I wish it wasn't that way, but that is the way it is. And so thinking about what your customers want is really important. Do they want you to have like a lot of reporting? Are they thinking about an intervention in health or housing or food access or any of those things? Great. So then how do you think about that? How are you talking about the staffing that your team has? How are you thinking about the professional development, the certifications? That's all client, like customer focused, right? That's all the people giving you dollars. Well, on the other side, depending on what your organization is doing, you still got to have high quality, real impactful things. And so that becomes the power of what kind of active listening are you doing? What kind of asset-based language are you talking about? Because when I talk to funders are always talking about deficiencies, the
Yep.
marginalized, the folks that are not getting services, the people that disproportionately don't have X or Y. Well, if I talk to those exact same people, and myself included, I was uninsurable for years before certain policies changed because I had cancer as a kid. And so I never thought I was a deficiency, but I couldn't have the basics of healthcare. So what I would always talk about would be, wouldn't it be wonderful if my pre-existing condition wasn't a problem? It was always separate, right? And so if somebody needs an intervention, how do we phrase that as an asset? And how do we get their voice? And how do we get it where we can go talk to the world and say, hey, look at this incredible community that we're serving and we're working with. And this is where that connection, and I love the episode you did a couple weeks back about storytelling, right? It's just like, that's where this kind of listening and these conversations start getting moved into this other place around storytelling. Because if we're treating the audience as separate but equally important, and we're tailoring that content and we're tailoring those messages and tailoring how we do that active listening, it then connects to so many more things that we're doing.
I think it's brave for you to say that our clients are our funders. And I don't hear enough people saying that, but that's really true, right? And it's
Often.
not popular to say that, but I think it's really an important thing that when you are looking at your communications and your outreach, to understand that you're being watched. And
Yeah.
if you want to go deeper, you're being judged for future investment or future collaboration. And so you've got to be thinking about that. However, I think sometimes you can go too far and then you cannot be speaking to, potential clients or actual clients, right? I mean, it's kind of
Right.
like a tough thing to kind of figure that out. But I love that you kind of start us off with that we need to identify those different buckets, if you will.
Well, and one of the tools I really recommend, because I love human-centered design, right? I just love it. And if you're not familiar with that concept, what it really does mean is that the humans we interact with, the people, the users, are at the center of the work and the decisions we're making. And so there's so many great tools out there around this concept of human-centered design. And one of the ones that always helps me out is something called a journey map. A journey map is this really powerful tool to think about how every single person that you're engaging with meets you and goes through this cycle. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes when I talk about clients and I'm talking about customers, one of I worked with a healthcare organization working with the folks living with HIV that were unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
Great organization doing amazing things. And one of the things that you would learn if you did a journey map was to say, one of the reasons that the city and the county were super interested in funding and supporting this work was because it prevented folks from needing the rest of the infrastructure. And so this major intervention of saying you don't need access to the healthcare, you don't need access to shelter beds, you don't need access to this because this other organization exists. All of a sudden, that's where the client, the person participating in the programs, is entirely aligned with the funders. And the more of those opportunities you can find, because you're using a tool like a journey map, the easier it's going to be, and the more exciting it is going to be for everybody that's a part of those conversations.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's such a strong tool for communication because we only
100%.
know what we want, or we only know what we know, and not what maybe the community needs or wants, right? So if you can kind of pull that thread together, it allows everybody to kind of like, okay, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think right now with civil discourse being so frantic and upset, it's even harder to get people to slow down and listen and kind of, you know,
Yeah.
engage differently, if
And
you
I
don't mind.
find for me, at least, it allows me to ask really good questions because I'll put like a little star that says, I think this is a truth. Like I'll put a hypothesis, but like I got to go find the answer. Well, and
Right.
then I get to go, talk to all these people and say, what are your thoughts? And what's the old adage? It's like, if you want to ask somebody for money, ask for advice, right? So like, I get to basically fundraise all the time because I'm just
Yeah.
saying like, you're super smart. I want to be super smart. This is my hypothesis. Make me smarter. And no one has
Right.
ever said to me, well, I don't want to tell you my expertise, right? You get to have them open the door for you. It's great.
So let's dig down on that because when we are talking about stakeholder input, I love that you led with, can I get your advice? Can I have a conversation? Um, is it as simple as that? I mean, is it something that literally we can start a conversation that way? Or what do you advise us on?
I do think it's that simple. Now, there
Okay.
are a lot of great tools, right? Like, don't get me wrong. One of the other really great human-centered design tools I love is something called an empathy map or customer persona, right? Where
Mm,
you get to have a thing where you are jotting down what do they say, what do they think, what do they do, what do they hear, what do they feel, right? Think about how you're peeling an onion back. But then once you do all that, then you talk about the gains or the pains that may exist, right? The gains that you generate or the pains you alleviate. But it's
yeah.
only after you've done all those other things. And if you don't have the answers to those questions, yeah, then ask, right? There's nothing better, I think, than a biannual or annual survey. And if you think I'm wrong, then you aren't listening to NPR right now, right? It's like the surveys are a really popular tool.
Yeah.
I think a facilitated focus group or with tools and tactics around liberating and engaging styles absolutely are powerful, but not everybody has the time or the ability to put a big survey together and do
Right.
data analysis. And not everybody's got the time and the ability to do a big focus group. So what are the other ways to do that? A cup of coffee with a local official or a bureaucrat that is an expert, a round table that exists on the issues that you're working with, where you don't just passively get told, but you have an engaging, hybridized sort of agenda. So that way there's a conversation that can be really strategic.
Mhm.
I think the more that we can pull those elements in where it's curiosity and empathy and active listening are at the heart of it, then it really doesn't matter what your tool is.
Mhm.
But the other tools that exist are really great. And at the end of the day, just being curious. If anybody listening to this reaches out to me and says, I saw you on the show, I'm going to have a conversation with you. And
Mhm.
let's have that dialogue because I think we're all stronger when we're all stronger. And I think most people in this sector default that to that position.
You know, it's so interesting that you said that. There's a major philanthropic funder in my community who has kind of not stopped, but I would say curtailed the number of experts that they're bringing into our community um, for specific things, and then lecturing or offering their thoughts to our community. And instead, I'm seeing them do more and more fireside chats or panels where they bring people together, and maybe
Yeah.
they're going to talk about childcare or unhoused veterans, whatever the topic is, but to bring a wider dialogue. And it's been wildly popular. wildly popular. Hearing from different people and getting different opinions in a much more organic way versus being lectured to.
Yeah, I think of it this way, and I'm in the Austin area. There's a really great program in town that I've been a part of called Leadership Austin, and one of the things that they do in Leadership Austin is they really show you the interconnectivity of all these issues that we all work on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a conversation about transportation, and a conversation about housing, and there's a conversation about food access, and there's a conversation about philanthropy. And what you kind of get to as you've been doing this work for a long time in with programs like that is you realize that not one of these problems gets solved in its own silo. There's not, if I were to go build, 200,000 more homes in Texas, I haven't fixed the unhoused population and the problems that surround it. If there's not a transportation solution, if there's not a food access issue, solution, if there's not a healthcare solution. And so one of the things I like really about this sort of idea of stakeholder engagement is thinking about landscape analysis, or thinking about gap analysis, or thinking about these other tools that we do all the time in strategic planning or business generation or corporate worlds. Well, what would we do if we took that same self-reflection and said, our true strengths are, our true opportunities are, our true weaknesses are, and we didn't try to become this big behemoth, but we went up to somebody and said, look, I'm really weak on transportation.
Right.
Can I work with like the local transit authority to get them to put a bus stop right next door to my building?
Yeah.
Not I make it sound easy, but it's not. But the first thing is you got to ask the question. And if you don't even know to ask that question, what do you get to do then?
Well, and I just keep thinking collaboration. And
Yeah.
it's hard. You would think that in the nonprofit sector that, we're doing the work of the angels and that we're going to be super collaborative. Not the case. And there's a lot of pettiness. There's a lot of jealousy. There's like, who's going to steal my cheese? Who's going to steal my funding? So
Yep.
it's shocking, but I think it's something we have to talk about and recognize that we need to be more collaborative. Not easy, to your point,
Not
getting
easy.
that bus shelter, not an easy thing, but it's how we can be more civically minded in approaching solutions. I think
And I
it's
think
good.
turning that light on to say abundance, right? Like, which is
Yeah.
it's a kind of a cliche word almost all of a sudden, but the reality is, more people don't vote than vote,
Yeah.
right? So if a candidate did not participate, that's who would win every election. There's more people that don't donate than do donate to nonprofits. So, you change these margins by 1 or 2%, all of a sudden we have more resources in the community. And I think what I hear from folks in our work, whether it's doing the Austin Water Strategic Plan or working for the Center for Public Safety Excellence or anybody else in between, the reality is that most people sit there and say, well, I don't want to serve on a board and I can't give you $1 million. So what's my
Right.
solution? And I have to sit there and go, you got $5, you show up to a committee, you make your voice heard, you're making a big impact because you're already doing more than most. And
Yeah.
so how do we create those opportunities for engagement and start saying, look at these really incredible victories you're making possible. But again, the first thing is you got to turn your ears on.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to the word impact. We don't always appreciate how powerful we can be, and how we can impact things, and the organizations that we work with impact things.
Right.
And so we don't have a lot of time. And before we let you go, I want to make sure that we talk to you about the decision tree. What is it and how does it work?
So I love decision trees. I just love them. I think about it this simple. At every question that you ask, there is a what is known as a choice point. So if you
Okay.
say, would you like to go to dinner? And someone says yes, well, you have more questions to ask. But if they say no, the conversation's not over. You're like,
Yeah.
interesting. Right? Is it because you're not hungry right now? Why are you not interested in dinner right now? Oh, it's because it's 11:30 in the morning. Well, obviously that you don't want dinner because you're still working, right? So when we talk about this, it's creating the path to have a sort of a yes or a no or an A or a B or an option one and an option two.
Mhm.
And what happens way too often is someone says, oh, I'm going to go for option one. And you don't know why they made that decision. You don't know the values behind it. You don't know were they really truly rejecting option 2, or is it just like they actually really love both options and they prefer option 1? I would peel that back and go, amazing. So I hear you say you want option 1. What was it about option 1 that made you pick that one? What was it about option 2 that made you not pick that one? Oh, they're really about equal? Excellent. Let's figure that out. Because when you start thinking about confirming the decision tree, you also get a deeper understanding on why people are making the choices that they're making. And you can use that information to further crystallize things down the decision tree. So if someone says, I'm hungry, I want dinner, then all of a sudden you got to go, wonderful. Do you want pizza? Do you want American cuisine? Do you want Indian? Right? Great.
Yeah.
What made you pick those things? Oh, so you want American. Great. Now we can going down this path, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you've developed an incredible story and a deep understanding, not just because of what they selected, but because of all the information you've gotten from confirming that data on what they didn't select. And if you only go down the one path, you're only getting about 5% of the data. And think about that for a second.
Okay, so let's put this into the context of, because of where we are right now in the year, year-end gifts. Yeah. And we're talking about tiers, like donor tier levels all the time, right?
All the time.
I mean, you mentioned National Public Radio. They are like the kings and queens of this process, right?
Yeah.
I often think that this is an economic decision. That somebody's like, yeah, I can do $250 a month, or I can only do $25 a month. How should I think about those choices, or those, if you will, pitches or opportunities in relationship to this decision tree?
So for me, the first question I would have is, why are we picking numbers for folks already? Right? I'm not a fundraising expert, but there's the first question I almost asked. Was the question becomes really simple, right? Is like, will you give annually? Will you give monthly? Mm-hmm. That's a very different conversation.
Yeah.
Not how much, right? So if someone says annually, wonderful. Would you like to give all of that at the end of the year, the beginning of the year, the middle of the year? Because I know for me, I actually don't like giving at the end of the year. I don't, because I'm a nonprofit person, right? And so I know that June, July, and August are actually where I'm going to have the most impact. So if I'm going to give one big check, I'm trying to give in June, July, and August. Mm-hmm. So if you were to ask me in December, will you give annually? My answer is no.
Yeah, interesting.
So am I not a supporter anymore?
Interesting.
If I say monthly, I may only be able to do $25 a month if the choices are 25, 50, 100, 250, 500, 1,000, which are the traditional choices. Right. But if you didn't put it as a button, maybe I'm giving $35 a month.
Interesting.
So now all of a sudden we can do those things. Hey, is there a way for me to reject that tote bag? I love tote bags. I love them so much. I have 100 of them. So why don't you keep your tote bag? And as opposed to you mailing me the tchotchke, let me save you the $9 or $10. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen an organization that allows me to reject my free gift. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So sometimes organizations, by doing that, create a weird incentive that says, I'm going to wait till there's a free gift I actually want because I can't reject it. Yes. See all the decision trees that we're now uncovering?
Yeah. Interesting.
That are assumptions just baked into the system. These are just baked into the system, so we have to pull them apart.
Right. How do we test this?
There's two different methodologies. One is A/B testing, where it's to say, I'm going to give option A and option B, and it's going to be one variable I'm changing. You can't change a bunch of things. So if you're doing an email blast, you're not changing the subject and the content and the color of the button. You're changing one thing. Oftentimes that's the subject or the way that the ask is done. But then there's other things, right? When the thing has just happened, when everybody listening to this who's doing end of year giving, I would go select 30, 40, 50 people randomly and say, what is it that you wish I had known going into the end of year giving?
Interesting.
Right? Pilot things. What if you had a user experience on your website that you had buttons that were $15, $35, $85 per month? Would people be more inclined to do that? Would you make more money or less money?
Mhm.
These kind of user experience, human-centered tests are always thinking about what are the pains and the gains
Mhm.
that you're either alleviating or creating for your clients or your customers. And the more knowledge you have, the better. But the reality is you have to be super intentional about the question, and you have to be really open to the answer, because you may get an answer you don't like. And the
Right.
wonderful thing about feedback is you can choose whether to accept or reject it, but you have to hear it.
But you have to hear it.
You
Well,
have to hear it.
yeah, I mean, we love hearing from you, Matt Glazer. You've just been such a wonderful guest to be on the Nonprofit Show. You can learn more about Matt Glazer, his team at Blue Sky Partners, blueskypartners.co. Based in Texas, they do work across the country. And Matt, having personal experience as a founder of a nonprofit, really has a lot to say. And yeah, I think we need to keep in touch with you, my friend. Very interesting
Always.
stuff. Yeah.
Always.
Hey, it's been a great conversation, and we get to have these conversations. We've now had more than 1,400 episodes of the Nonprofit Show, and that's because we have these partners that have been supporting us most from day one. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Holdings Nonprofit Banking, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and JMT Consulting. These are the folks that are with us day in and day out. Matt, if you remember the first time you were on, we end each and every episode with this message. And it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.